I'm going to let you know a little bit about our panel. And the focus of our panel, by the way, is weathering the storm and how we can turn the tide on threats. So introducing the panel, I'm going to go in the order of my script, not the order you guys are sitting there, so you might have to raise your hand. This is too much for me. All right, Judy Hatchett. She is the VP and CISO at Surescripts. Raise your hand, Judy. We are so excited to have her because she ensures that clinicians and technology providers across the country trust Surescripts to exchange clinical information safely and securely. She is also an advocate for women in security and diversity and leadership, and so we are super excited about that too. All right, you go, girl. And next we have Martin Holste. He is the CTO of Cloud at Trellix. He's waving already down there on the end. He's the creator of ELSA and StreamDB, the co-founder of FireEye Helix, and now the CTO of Cloud at Trellix. He has experience in developing cloud security strategies, and he works passionately alongside customers to secure their cloud workloads. Thank you also for being here, Martin. All right, and then we have our very own FRSecure Eric Hanson. He might be the one with the colored hair. He is our offensive services manager at FRSecure. He has 20 plus years of experience across application and web development, system admin, and pen testing. He is a critical member of our FRSecure team, managing our offensive service offerings like the pen testing and red teaming. He's one of our bigger brains. Thank you for being here, Eric. All right, not to be outshone, we have Seth Bowling, also a member of the FRSecure team. Seth is also on the offensive services team, but he's the R&D team lead at FRSecure, and he has spent the last decade becoming an expert in information security, offensive services, and pen testing. He now serves our offensive services research and development team lead, and his expertise is used to improve our offerings and to help better protect our clients. So happy to have you with us also, Seth. All right, so let's have some fun. What we're gonna do, I'm gonna come down there on the floor level. We're gonna let you guys collect some questions too. And if you were like really diligent and read the agenda, you might have seen that we're gonna let these guys talk first and then you're gonna get questions. We're gonna mix it up. I might kind of go back and forth. So if you have one, plan to like make sure I know about it and come at least halfway up one of the aisles so I make sure my mic is gonna catch you, okay? But we're gonna start with the first question. I've got this one, right? Okay. We're gonna take it easy on the first one. What is the best hacker handle that you've ever seen? You're gonna have to use your mics. Turn them on. No, yeah, whatever. We'll let you guys all talk if you're fast enough.
I'd have to go with Crash Override to start with.
You. Zero cool.
Cali Cat.
I know a guy whose name is Alex, and his hacker handle is Bob. So that's
All right, that's one way to start off this whole list. All right, I'm sure you guys have some too. Talk about it next time you get a chance to socialize. All right, we'll go with one more. Going to start with the basics. Where is the best place to start when you're building a security program? One of you can take it, and if somebody else wants to jump in, we can go with it.
I guess I could start. I mean, there's probably 2 or 3 different places depending on the size of business, but unfortunately most people start from a budget and work backwards. It might come down to mission focus, so depending on what kind of business you're in, you may have different risk tolerance. So if you're in a smaller shop, you're probably going to look at outsourcing a lot of it. So finding the right partner to work with becomes really important there. If you're a bigger shop, then it's a lot more about hiring and people from there, and then working backwards from what tools that they're going to need to make their time most useful. So it's really a question of whether you're employing a lot of your own people or whether you have to outsource that component, and that's generally where you're going to start from.
I'm actually going to take that one to a different direction. I start with policies and standards, and if you don't have good policies and standards that are known across the enterprise, you don't have an information security program, because no one knows what they're supposed to do or what rules they're supposed to follow. And so the budget and the people and everything else are very, very important, as well as some of the foundational components. But if you don't have a good policy and standard, a great governance baseline, you really don't have a lot to build off of.
Yeah, I mean, I'll just echo what Judy said. I was going to say that as well. I mean, policy and standard is so important. Oh, my friend.
Now it's a panel.
Thank you. You should start with a shot and then policies and standards.
Yes, because they can be very dry.
Yeah. So I think it's really important to not have to figure things out when something's, amiss, when there's a problem, when you're faced with something, right? So having that stuff established beforehand, being able to refer back to that and go, this is what we said we're going to do. Let's do that, right? And we thought about it in a time where things were not critical. So.
Where's mine? Oh, okay. Yeah, totally agree with everything that was said. The only thing I would probably add from a different angle is I actually completely agree with what Evan brought up before is asset management, understanding, what you actually have in your environment before you can secure it is a must.
Thank you for that. Next answer.
She's saying closer.
All right. Thank you, all of you guys. I'm glad that you all had a chance to answer. Let's hope that works. All right. Question from the audience. Anybody got one? It's called Stump the Panel.
It's really easy for me.
How do you look at frameworks when that's where we started 5-6 years ago, and it seems like policies are still trying to get developed.
I will say a framework is really important because that gives you guardrails and it gives you next steps. You can actually be assessed on a framework so you know what your maturity level is. So that is a great starting point besides policies and standards. But the framework is just that. It's some guiding principles. It's not going to tell you or give you the temperature of where your organization is at and what the awareness is or the educational level or how much people are adhering to the standards and the policies. But frameworks are definitely important. There's multiple frameworks out there. I would say you can't pick a wrong framework because if you choose like a NIST CSF, everything maps back to it, but it's also very dense, but it's customizable. You can pick other frameworks like HITRUST, SOC 2, or COBIT, or COSO, some of the other ones that are a little bit easier understanding. They definitely give you guardrails and direction of where to go.
I'd say frameworks also give you a great frame of reference in your peer groups, so you can kind of, compare and contrast how you're doing with others maybe in your industry or same, size business, things like that.
All right, fantastic. Do you want to answer that one too, Eric? Okay. All right, we're gonna go. We're gonna go to the next question. You guys will have fun with this one because it's kind of open. You'll get to talk about a lot of stuff. The question is, where are people messing up in general? What should clients fear more, for instance? Exploit of an O-Day or general lack of a security program? And then B, if we have time, how do you appropriately identify and respond? I thought that one up all by myself.
I mean, I would say that, look at, man. I'll take another two, no. I would say, obviously a lack of a security infrastructure or things like that is going to be something you have to focus on, right? I mean, if you're worried about the O-Day and the O-Day hits you, all the other stuff that comes down as the dominoes start to fall are going to be even more, going to have a stacked up problem, right? You got to kind of have some of that stuff, I'd say, in place. But as far as where people are messing up, I mean, I think there's a lot of areas people are doing really great, and there are a lot of places where people are messing up. I think we have a really hard time making sure that dollars are going to the right place. I think we have a lot of requirements that are focused incorrectly. I think we have a lot of things that cause people to divert things to areas that are not best suited for them. So I think, fixing those things and working on those things is important. Something I say a lot is like, I get it, you got to check a box. You need to follow that compliance or whatever that thing is, but try to scope your projects, try to scope your overall agenda to check that box and improve security, right? Not just check that box. If you're in a situation where you're spending money just to check a box, it's unfortunately maybe a waste of money a lot of times. You know, like we can do more with that. You can work with people who can get you further.
So if I understand it correctly, there's a 3-part question. Renee, you didn't tell me I'd have to think about this. Where are people screwing up or continuing to mess up, sorry? They just make really poor decisions. And sometimes it's based on they're so busy, they're in a hurry, there's customer demands, there's time to market, and they just think that if I can get this done real quick, and I'll come back and I'll fix it later. And 9 times out of 10, they never come back and fix it. And those are just some really poor decisions, along with, oh, it's just my administrative account. I can check my personal email. What harm will it do? No one's gonna know. Oh, wait a minute. I just wanna download this music to my work laptop or install this really cool feature that now just gives some other organization full rights to our data on that laptop, those click-through agreements. Just really poor decision-making. 0-day versus security program. I thought about this quite a bit, and it's tough because if you had a good security program, you'd know how to respond to a 0-day. Most organizations, if they're good at ITIL and they know how to follow a process and have really smart people, with a lot of organizations have really, really smart people, you're still probably not going to understand the process to go through to make sure that you're protected. Continually check for that vulnerability, continually watch, look at the underground stuff that's happening, look at the chatter that's happening in other organizations. How do you reach out to your vendors? It's all part of your incident response program that you build as part of a security program. So it's kind of like chicken and egg in some regards. But I would tell you I'd rather have a really good security program than to constantly be responding to 0 days. Because sometimes if you have a really good security program and you're patching when you're supposed to, you don't have to worry about 0 days. You're taking care of your technical debt. You don't have to worry about 0 days.
Yeah, I look at it more from I ran an IR and a SOC for most of a decade, so it's all about the incidents for me and looking at it from a threat model perspective. So if you walked away from your laptop, unlocked and open in a coffee shop, how would you know what happened next? That's kind of one angle you could take at it from. Let's say an O-day happens. That's basically the same thing, right? Complete unfettered access to your assets. How would you be able to track all the different things that happened? And then kind of on the other side, but meeting in the middle, is what does it take for an attacker to circumvent all the password reset mechanisms you have and to get in? So every time I reset a password on any website, I kind of evaluate how easy that is and what it took to do that. Same if you're calling in on any financial institution and you're like, yeah, I'm glad it was me calling in and actually being me when I reset all this stuff, because all they asked was my birthday, and that's probably not a great authenticator. So it's kind of taking all those things, and we continue to see 90% of stuff coming from phishing to begin with, and then moving on. And yes, there's plenty of O-Day stuff out there, as we've seen in the last few weeks and every week. There's always something out there, but it's that, okay, let's just assume that people are gonna make mistakes. What do we do after that point? And how do you scope an incident? How do you work backwards from that? And how do you know, do we have to tear down every single laptop in the entire organization and put out a giant press release? Or can we say, nope, there was a mistake, it did this, and then it did this, and based on this scoping, we've disabled the right usernames, and we've contained the right devices, and working backwards from that. So it gives you something a little more concrete and a little more technical to work on. In my past sessions, I talked about getting a new laptop, and our backup software is how we would transfer all the files to the new laptop. And again, I'm really glad when I log into that backup software that I'm me, because I think about, well, what would it take to be me on the backup software to restore all of the files from my laptop onto any other device in the world, right? So it's taking that very, concrete approach to saying, how do I know what's going on? How can I prove it? And the, verify, not trust kind of scenario.
Side question, what is your birthday?
He hasn't had a shot yet. Ask him after.
You want to drink your shot now?
While
No
he does
pressure.
that, I will say, speaking of, kind of making some poor decisions and not coming back to them, as pen testers, we run into that a decent amount. I mean, I one time on a pen test saw an environment where the on-prem exchange server had domain users have local admin, and I couldn't help but think, like, why would that be the case, right? Like, why would they? And I got to imagine they were setting up Exchange, and they're like, someone tried to log in and couldn't log in and get their emails, and so they were like, let's try to make them just local admins and see if that works or something, right? And it didn't, right? You know it didn't. But then they didn't go back because they were in a panic. They were trying to get Exchange up and running. Oh, we could email anybody, right? And so who knows how many years until we got into that environment. We're like, your domain users are local admin of your Exchange server, and we dumped every hash for your entire domain through that. It was insane. So, yeah.
Yeah, and I think just the fact of the matter is that in general, the majority of major incidents and breaches are not from 0 days, right? It's some other attack vector, social engineering, phishing, in general, that sort of thing. So definitely having a comprehensive security program is going to do you more in the long run than worrying about, patching every O day that comes out within 6 hours.
I think you're hearing that one loud and clear from the panel. Thank you. All right, how about a question? Did these guys stir up any questions? All right, we have one. What's your name? Eric from Old Orange Company. Eric, what you got?
How many times have you recommended something to a customer that they fix, or you found a flaw, and then you do a similar exercise the next year, and you find out that they actually didn't take that action?
Did you catch that? You tell them what to do, and they don't do it.
I mean, specifically that they said they fixed it, but they didn't, or just we recommended it and they didn't fix it. Yeah, I mean, definitely more often than we should. I struggle to figure out a number, and most statistics are made up on the spot, right? So it's a decent amount. I mean, I'd say it's like 50%. That maybe even more. That there's something that was a big enough deal that we say something about it, and we really we'd expect not to see it the next year, and we still do. People are getting better. I will say that. 4 years ago, 5 years ago, or something like that, it was like 80% probably. I would year after year, we'd do pen tests, and I'd find something in 1 year, and I'd see it the next year, and I'd see it the next year, and I'd see it the next year, and I would be like driving this home, on some deliveries, and it just wasn't getting done. Nowadays, I will say that things are a lot better. More people are taking care of those types of things, are taking them seriously. I think that there's a lot of news, a lot of cybersecurity in the news. It continues to go more and more, and it's more, I think people are getting more buy-in and stuff like that. Not enough still, but they're more. And I think it's allowing them to have maybe the budget or the staff or whatever it is more often to do the things than before. Still not enough.
So I would say, to add to that, to put a little more context, if we have a list of 10 findings, what I see most often is the most critical, or at least the most, even if it's not the most critical, the one that stands out the most on a report, that will get fixed, and then the other 9 things that led to that point won't. So it's really just contextualizing the entire attack vector and how you got from 0 to hero.
Yeah, to be clear, I'm not saying they didn't fix anything since last time, just that we saw stuff still that should have been fixed.
I'm going to get another question. I'm going to walk a little further back, so be ready. Who's got one? Oh, got one over there. Now, I'm not going to lean from here to there, so pass this down. Yeah.
Hi, my name is Parker. So asking for a friend, say you're building a cybersecurity thing at your place of work, and nobody likes you, and nobody likes security. So it's it's great. Every change that you've made to try to help make things slightly more secure than they were before has been met with massive conflict. How would you best approach this situation to get your company more secure and not get fired for people hating you? Thank you.
So Parker, welcome to my world.
Kudos to that guy.
I never took this job to make friends. You have to find some leadership that's willing to buy into it and help support you. And maybe go after some low-hanging fruit that gives greater value. Not tackle the really big rocks and prove to them that it's not as hard as they think it is and that it's actually going to help. You can also use use cases and some storytelling as to why it's relevant to your environment. I really wish I could tell you it gets better, but it doesn't always.
There's a psychologist out there named John Gott who says 60% of yourself you can't change. And I would say it's probably the same for organizations, which are comprised of people, obviously. And so expecting, all of that change is not going to happen. So part of it is you need to be honest with what can change and what can't, but really understanding what the incentives are and how to get those incentives aligned is the key. And that's true of anything, but especially in a situation where your program is up against quite a bit, or you can't get people to care, then sometimes just being honest and saying, I'm just gonna have to be, the person that does this for the good of the company and document everything, make sure you can at least show your work. But yeah, sometimes you have to admit maybe it's not a good fit if you're not getting the right enjoyment out of there. Life is short. On the other hand, there's that 40% that can change. So don't give up and just say, well, we'll never fix anything around here. There's lots of things that you can do if you're willing to stick it out. One of the things I tell my kids when they don't get something right on the first try is I say, well, how many tries would it be worth to you to get this right? And they say, well, I could probably do maybe 6 or 7 tries. That'd probably be worth it. I'm like, okay, well, you're only on try number 2. And yes, it's pedantic, but I tell myself that on a regular basis. So I think it's worth knowing because it is tricky to know if you're trying to get something organizationally to change, am I in the 60% zone that's not going to change, or am I in the 40% zone that will change? And what are the tools I can get? How do I speak the language of the people that don't feel like they're aligned with me right now? So pretty general, but I think that might be able to help you.
But I think you touched on a good point, speaking the language. If you can speak in their language and get them to understand the terms of why this is important. There's a lot of data out there on what a breach costs. There's a lot of data on how, after the fact, how much harder it is to fix things than it is to do it the front side. So if you actually have some data and, like I said, some analysis for your industry or for companies like yours of the like size, that also helps. Because it does happen to organizations. I mean, it happens to all sizes of organizations. And so there's a ton of data out there that help support that.
Yeah, and I'll just add, it's a different angle, but as a pen tester, I'm used to being on a call, talking to someone at a company who doesn't like me. And they don't want to hear what I'm saying, and they want to sometimes find a reason why you're wrong. I can say that the biggest thing that I found over my years of delivering information to people is that it's really about finding their motivations and what matters to them and trying to align your motivations with theirs in a way that accomplishes both tasks, right? You think about it from that perspective of saying, like, why are they resisting this? Is it the money? Is it something else? Whatever it is, and then try to be like showing a value that aligns with their interests, and then they start to gain more faith in you as you do that. Maybe you start with something small and say, this costs us nothing except for 15 minutes of my time, and I just did this, and show that impact. A lot of times when we're doing pen tests, it's really hard for me to just come in and be like, we got DA. And they're like, okay, what does that mean? We have to show impact. We have to make them care about it. We have to make them understand financial implications of those things. And then they start to think about those things and actually appreciate the words that are coming out of your mouth.
I think one other thing I just want to add in that is if you have contractual obligations, that's another level. If you have contractual obligations around security practices or security controls, that's another lever to be able to pull as well.
So I even have advice for Parker. Stay true to your purpose, meet them where they're at, and if you have to hold your head high and find somebody else to help, then do it. Okay, I need a question from this side of the room. Okay. Let us know who you are, please.
My name's Kevin. I'm just curious, as cybersecurity leaders, what's kind of your biggest fear? What keeps you guys up at night?
It's not really tech, I guess. Yeah, for many, it's just larger, big questions that I think all adults have around things, and that's kind of part of it. Is from a tech perspective, sometimes it is important to take a step back and be like, okay, it's just tech, like it'll be okay. On the other hand, we see more and more kinetic cyber warfare going on, right? So there are those threats out there, and it is for real, and we do have to care about it. So it's not like these things aren't necessarily a big deal, but you do have to take that into consideration when you're saying, okay, for this person's password right here, what kind of emergency is this? Yes, it's probably get out of bed in the middle of the night if it's a password leaked. But at the end of the day, you do have to keep healthy and be able to make sure that you can weather the many incidents that you will deal with in the course of business. That's just the case of it. And as we heard earlier from Max, I mean, there's 4 hours is the time it can take for a laptop to basically be listed on the black market. And then it's kind of an interesting dark economics to see how long it takes for someone to buy it now or whatever it is on that forum to decide to actually take control of that thing. So you do have some time to work with. But yeah, it's not about a given incident. It's about the overall process and about the model that you have and making sure that that approach is right, not necessarily that situation.
I think my answer is probably a little more specific, and it's around specifically the healthcare industry and medical devices. Because, while all security breaches and incidents have a human impact, this is a very potentially real life, life and death situation. So I think about that a lot because it's kind of the Wild West, honestly, as far as securing these things. Old equipment hasn't been updated, released and never seen again. And there's a lot of scary attack vectors there.
Yeah, and I'll just add, ICS and IoT in general with that, you know what I mean? Like areas that we're breaking into finally to start thinking about more, I feel like. I'm looking forward to see more come in that space. But right now it scares me for sure. And my kids, they keep me up at night.
I wish it was just one thing that kept me up, but there's a lot of things. As a CISO, when you start really understanding your organization and what's happening within your organization, within the products, et cetera, and you maybe have overturned some rocks that you wish you would not had picked up, it's definitely those kind of things that keep me up at night because sometimes they're not easily solvable, and it takes time, takes money, takes change management, organizational change management sometimes. And so as a CISO, there's a lot of things that keep me up at night. I'm very grateful I have an amazing team that does some really great things, but the bad guys don't sleep. We have to try and sleep, so.
All right, great answers. I'm going to throw on a little bit of a change for you. What do you see as some common mistakes or pitfalls with logging and monitoring specifically?
Ooh, I'm very passionate about this one.
Well, then go, Martin.
So for those of you who don't know, the Helix product we have at Trellix that I founded started out Splunk-like, and it's got that log management component. One of the teams that I run right now handles SaaS logging, and this is a big part of it. So I talked about backup software and banks and things like that. So we are losing so much visibility from a telemetry perspective on some of the most critical applications that you've got out there because they are simple web pages that you log into and sometimes not so simple stuff. So we've gone to great lengths to make sure you can pull in things like who's dumping all your Salesforce records, where is your 365 data going. Those are the ones that I've found to become, to me, I'm most passionate about because really, some of your most important data is there. It's probably not even on-prem in a lot of situations, excepting for the medical stuff and, device management, things like that. So the SaaS telemetry to me is the biggest part of it.
I think for me, it's logging for the sake of logging. You're not necessarily logging meaningful data or data that you can take action on, but you're logging. And that to me is just a waste of time. It's a bunch of screen fatigue. You're looking at stuff that really doesn't matter. And I think that a lot of organizations do that.
I would say, like kind of a lack of proper baselining, and then I guess more importantly, continuing to adjust that baseline over time. I mean, things change, business changes, the applications we use and everything change. I mean, as an example, some people will come to me all the time as a pen tester and be like, what's the best AV or EDR or whatever it is, right? And I'm like, I mean, there's a lot of good ones. There's a lot of ones that we'll see, there's a lot of things that we'll see, different solutions environments where I have seen people utilize them very well in a way to shut us down. And I've seen the exact same stack of things at another place and it caught nothing. And it comes down to that baselining and configuration of that. If you're missing that, it's like, well, you just paid a lot of money for nothing, so.
Yeah, and log fatigue is a very real thing. I mean, I was at a job one time where 800 alerts on an average day was not uncommon. And you just don't have the human hours in a day to do everything. So it's about really refining those alerts and not just logging for the sake of logging. Yeah.
Well, I want to add one more thing. Aside from the SaaS stuff, for those of you running containers, I did quite a few ride-alongs on the Mandiant side back when we were still the same company on container forensics. There is really no such thing as container forensics. If something happens to your container, all you have are the logs, and that's it. Everything else is completely ephemeral. So as you guys are building out more and more container apps, please keep that in mind.
Okay, you guys ready for another one from the group? Okay, who's got one? Mr. Wilkes.
I was going to claim I was Matt Finley. Joshua Wilkes, FRSecure. Where is the industry underinvesting as far as technology? And conversely, where are we overinvesting as far as technologies?
I have so many responses to that. No, I think you can't say for sure where it's under and over invested from an industry perspective because it comes down to the customer. So I would say, you hear me talk about psychology and things like that. I don't think we're doing enough on the user experience or user interface side. To the 800 alerts thing, I've done some sessions earlier this year where it's never mind the detection. What do you do after you get an alert and how do you work through that process? And just better interfacing with the human itself to figure out what is this analyst actually going to be able to do with this information. And yes, we try to do a lot of automation. You don't get very far with that because every org is a little bit different. There are things you can do for shortcuts. But to me, I'd say the underinvestment right now is really trying to understand how people are interacting with their security apparatus.
Mutual agreement?
Yeah, I would also say that some organizations, probably most organizations, are underinvesting in the number of people in their security teams. They are trying to cut costs, and so they're trying to do more with less. And what happens with that is things just fall to the wayside, or things are missed, or things are dropped. I think from an overinvesting is I think organizations are buying one tool to fix one problem. So you end up with a bunch of tools that do a lot of different things, but you don't know what to do with them because there's just a bunch of tools. And you don't really look at how do you look at one tool that maybe could fix 3 problems and leverage that tool, or how do you use automation or configuration to really fine tune it. So that's typically what I see as a lot of tools to do a lot of different things when you could simplify that.
Okay, I'm gonna tag on to, we have 5 minutes, 6 minutes. First of all, do you wanna hear a joke or do you wanna hear another question? Good joke? Okay, I promise not to pick on anybody in the front few rows. But, Aaron, do you got a joke and can I trust you? Because, all right.
I don't think I have a joke. I think I have a question. Can I use the question? Okay. How deep do you go in vendor risk management?
That's not a joke, right?
Not deep enough these days. There's so much happening within the vendor space that, as you saw with Log4j, that you just you don't do that in an initial risk review. You don't get into that SBOM. You don't get into that, to how much depth there is. It's a challenge, because again, I go back to the staffing issue and the tools. I mean, we use a very popular tool by this group that does a really great job, but there's still things that I feel like we miss when things happen. Like I said, Log4j, that's stuff that you just don't uncover. Or when you look at the financial history of an organization, what's the probability of that company being purchased? What does that mean to you? What does that mean to your tools? What does that mean to your relationship with the vendor? Now did they become a competitor versus a partner?
Yeah, my team wrote the telemetry that discovered the SolarWinds part, so it's a little close to the on this one, and yeah, it comes down to there's not much you can do because it's often out of your hands what is going to get purchased. So you have kind of two angles. You can say the only thing you can purchase has to be, you have to be able to get telemetry from it so we can at least notice what's going on. Or you have to take a hard line and say, well, you can't run that if we can't see it. So that would be my recommendation. It might not work every time, but at least you can create that blind spot and say there's got to be an exception process. You have to understand the risk you're inheriting when you're running anything in the enterprise to say, we have no idea where this thing came from or what it's going to do. Let's at least call that out, and if the org still says we're willing to take that risk, that's out of your hands, but at least then you're calling it out.
So being more on the offensive side, I would say one of the benefits of that is most of the tools I use are open source. And so, before we deploy anything on a client network, we test it and go through every single line of code to make sure that there's, nothing potentially malicious or, defective there. So from that perspective, I would say if you are using any open source tools, have someone qualified go through and make sure that there's, no inherent risk there.
As the person who's generally the one on this team that reads all of those lines of code, it's grueling, but it's worth it.
All right, thank you. Thanks for the question, Aaron. I think I'm going to wrap up with, for the panel, is there any other common mistakes or threats that you see out there on a regular basis that you want to talk about? I think it's important for the audience to hear about.
I'll harp on it again. I always think of that, it's a meme now with Mr. Burns from The Simpsons goes through like 7 different security doors, and he gets to this really important area, and there's a screen door flapping by the time he gets all the way through all the security controls. So it's just making sure you truly understand what the shortest path is for an attack, and that it may not be going through all the stuff you're focusing on. There may be some completely out of band way to do all of that and to think about that.
I actually will second that. That is, if you understand your environment and you have your own internal threat intel, and you know what's going to be the most vulnerable next in your environment, or maybe where they may be heading, that's really important. It's not just the threat intel that you get outside your organization about what's happening, but the threat intel you have inside of knowing your own environment. What looks normal? Where are your most critical assets? Where are your admin accounts? How are you protecting them? And knowing what path could an attacker take.
Yeah, I mean, I'd say that people focus a lot on patching and things like that, and put a lot of faith in it, and they're not, like he was just saying, thinking more about like what is the fastest route, what is the shortest route, and realizing that a lot of times it's misconfigurations or some kind of thing like that. I think we need to look at all of those things and not just think that security is about an exploit or a vulnerability. It's a vulnerability, but it's not an exploit, right? It's not necessarily. Please change your service account password that hasn't been changed since 2006. All of you, right now, please do that. I can't even tell you how many times that's an issue.
Yeah, 2 words and an acronym. Turn on MFA.
Yes. I want to add to that, lost my train of thought now with that one.
Then you can't add, I guess. Okay, if you think of it, just shout over me. All right, so we're at 3:15, and right now Oscar is ready to come up here and wrap up and talk about dissecting the ransomware Killchain. Remember to keep it down. And special thank you to the 4 of you. You guys did fantastic. What do you guys think?